Hello and welcome to our Mamy, zielone, pojęcie podcast from the Wrocław University of Environmental and Life Sciences. My guests today are Professors Tomasz Benhazi and Professor Sebastian Opaliński, and we will be discussing something very special, something called Precision Livestock Farming, and I will not touch on that at the minute. The experts will tell you all about it in a sec, but let me just introduce them to you so you know that they're really amazing people and they've got a lot of experience in this and also in general science of animal welfare. So Professor Benhazi completed his PhD studies at the University of Adelaide. He worked as a research scientist for 17 years before joining the University of Southern Queensland, Australia in 2010 as an associate professor, and then the Taiwan National University in 2022 as full professor. As part of his academic activities, Thomas has supervised over 35 PhD, master's and honours students and is involved in delivering 8 under and 4 postgraduate courses. He has led or participated in approximately 40 international research and development projects and also published approximately 300 journal articles, book chapters and conference proceedings, as well as obtained 8 patents on a number of innovative technologies in the US, Australia and Europe. Currently, he is actively engaged in the commercializing of his patented inventions via his 3 private companies established in Europe and Australia. Professor, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And then Associated Professor Sebastian Opaliński, in his research, focuses on precision livestock farming, in fact, precision livestock farming tools and their impact on animal welfare, production efficiency and environmental viability of livestock farms through the application of advanced information and communication technologies. He's also investigating odor nuisance generated during intensive livestock production and developing methods for odor prevention and control technology. An alumnus of Wrocław University of Science and Technology, he's the leader of the leading research group at Wrocław University of Environmental and Life Sciences called Animal Science for Future. Recently, he has studied the use of biochar as an innovative feed and bedding additive in livestock production, including the molecular mechanism of biochar action on livestock, and particularly poultry. Sebastian Opaliński, thank you, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for introduction.
So, maybe without further theorizing, let's speak about what is really the subject of our show, which is precision livestock farming. And I think you both put this idea in my head. Is it the future or is it just a short-lived trend? That's what we're going to try and find out, aren't we? So, what is PLF or precision livestock farming and why do we need it, professors?
Who's going to start?
So you very welcome to present your ideas.
Well, first we have to talk about this acronym, Precision Livestock Farming. So because PLF, it's actually the acronym that we are normally using in like our research work. So let's say this is real-time monitoring of livestock production, I will say. Real-time monitoring, which is using the quite fancy equipment sometimes, but sometimes very, very regular one and quite simple to monitor the microclimate of the buildings, so the barn, let's say. But also it's possible to monitor the health status of the animals. It's also possible to monitor the efficiency, the productivity, and etc. So it's quite important for we call it production. I don't know. I know that normally people do not like this word for the livestock production because it's really like industrialization of the agriculture. But this is how it is. Yeah. If we are saying about the growing market for the meat production, for example, and probably in 20, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we will be doubled with the meat production. At the same time, we are really decreasing we can observe the decreased number of the farmers So less farmers, more animals.
meat.
So more meat, more animals. So how we can deal with that problem? I mean, to monitor everything when we have less farmers than we had like 20 years ago or 30 years ago. So this tool, this model, this PLF is the only solution, I guess. So answering maybe on the beginning for your question, is it a future? In my opinion, it's a future. Yeah.
Okay. Right, and you said.
I hope I didn't say everything.
No. But you said you said
fine.
that you said that this is many things can be monitored. So maybe Thomas, you can elaborate on that. What is it that can I call them farmers? These guys that keep livestock.
Livestock producers. Yeah.
What sort of data would you say, really crucial? So that, as Sebastian said.
So before I elaborate on that, I would like to go a little bit more general. So I think Sebastian was absolutely right in his explanation. But I think when we talk about precision farming generally, it's about ICT technologies, implementation of ICT technologies in agriculture. So it's always about the better acquisition and utilization of information, whether it's plant production, whether it's animal production, whether it's vegetable production, wine production, fish production, doesn't matter. We basically, as Sebastian said quite correctly, farmers now overburdened with the duties associated with looking after a large number of animals to make animal production, crop production, vegetable production, whatever, viable economically. So therefore, they can't basically pay attention to individual animals or have less capabilities, time, etc. to do so. So these technologies, sensor technologies, computer technologies, communication tools, used to very specifically and in a very targeted way acquire information and immediately use that information for the betterment of the animals, the environment, and probably the larger society as well. So it's definitely the future.
So it's a win-win. Animals, you said betterment of animals. So
100%.
A lot of people now, the concern is 100%, how these animals are treated.
Yeah. I wouldn't go into what can be measured, because that's basically the interesting part of our work. We're developing really innovative new technologies to acquire body weight, environmental information, the color of vegetables, the ripeness of fruit, etc. So it's all very interesting. We can probably have another broadcast just on that, and right. Obviously it's not the aim for that particular session. But I think that's, as I said, that is the development sort of part of precision agriculture generally. But I think what the general public really needs to understand, that, as you said, it's really beneficial for the farmer, but mainly beneficial for the animals, particularly when we're talking about livestock production.
Yeah, this is also quite recently well-developed system that can be backup for the farmers who normally do it manually. So, for example, if you assess the welfare, before you were doing it by an inspector, someone was coming just looking for the animals, for the health status, and okay, how many animals he can investigate per one day, maybe hundreds, not more. But with this system, this is a very, very efficient system. You can monitor them, like I said, on a real time and then all the time. So this is really, really helpful for both sides, for farmers and for animals also. It's really good. So.
Very briefly, again, I have to emphasize the terms of future. It's definitely, as I said, in my mind, it can't be any other way. But later on during this talk, we'll talk about the obstacles, the challenges, the problems associated with these technologies. It's not easy to implement very refined, quite delicate electronic instrumentation in a fairly robust unforgiving environment of a livestock barn. Any of you or the general public who've been to pig, poultry, cattle buildings will understand that it's usually a dusty, environment. It has all sorts of airborne pollutants. So basically, this instrument has to, withstand this challenging environment. So, in relation to that, in terms of implementation, it's still a developing area.
And it probably needs to be tested by people like you, maybe first.
Absolutely.
I see academia here leading the way, so that then possibly you can spread the information about that and educate farmers, provide, some special courses perhaps. So maybe...
Just very importantly, I have to say that, academia has a huge role to play still, but it's very important to engage new innovative companies who are actually trying to transfer the technology through commercialization. So it's definitely, us academic, have a important input into this process, but we shouldn't underestimate the importance of encouraging companies and the collaboration between companies and universities in order to ensure that these technologies are actually implemented on farms.
I will also, for conclusion, I will say that we have to remember this is quite multidisciplinary approach, because
Absolutely.
we have animal scientists, veterinarians, animal husbandry, and all this related field. And also on the other side, we have engineers, we have people from the high tech, and not necessarily very, very much into the livestock production before. So for them, it's something completely new. Maybe the first time they've seen cow or hen, maybe first time they've been in a building where it's 40, 50,000 of broiler chickens going all around and literally running from one side to another. And then they thought that it's, wow, what's going on here? And now they have to detect something. And there is a lot of background noises and background things that they just completely change their mind. And for the beginning, they thought that they know how to project it, and then everything was really easy, but not necessary in the practice. So we've seen a lot of examples that we were coming with a ready, steady device to the farm, but it was not completely.
And it was okay. Well,
It does happen. It does.
That leads
So you-
me
does
to
happen.
my
You need
next
it, yeah.
question. What's your experience of actually implementing these devices? Because I understand in the projects that you two have been involved in so far in this collaboration between the two of you and the groups that you lead, there have been projects, and you have worked with the actual systems. So can you tell us a little bit more about that, please?
Sure. I might just start with that. But before we talk about technologies, I also have to highlight the importance of international collaboration, which are sitting here is a good example of it.
Exactly.
This is such a complex, difficult research area, as a matter of fact. I think combining a bit of gray matter internationally is so important, because none of us have individually the answers. Some individuals might think that they have a huge input, but in reality, it has to be a very collaborative work area, and international collaboration is very important, because the challenges are so great. If we want to overcome, it's very important. So I have this sort of privileged position of being both an academic and a budding business person.
Exactly.
Basically falling down all the time and making all sorts of mistakes. So I can't say that I'm very good at what I do, but certainly the process of doing that and understanding the commercial challenges as well as some of the scientific aspects, it's really, really beneficial. And I think I have a fairly good understanding of all the small little things which can go wrong and make one technology basically viable or non-viable in a farm environment. So
if I could just interject one thing.
For sure.
You've been using that word viable, and I'm not sure if this is clear for people. Can we go for something slightly more common words?
Sure. So I will give you a couple of. That's what that was just an introduction to a couple of examples, and I think what I would try to highlight the problems, not so much. I'm not promoting anything here. I'm highlighting the problems. So when we started working on weight monitoring using image analysis way back. The work actually been started in Silso back in the late 90s, basically. Long time ago, obviously.
And the Silso, is that a place?
A Silso Research Institute, which is well known in our area of work, which was the premier agriculture engineering research institute in the UK, in Bedfordshire.
Right.
Not far away from the Luton airport. So I made my pilgrimage, a number of times there and had very good relationship with late Christopher Wattis, who was the director of that institute at that time. So they started playing with that idea of taking picture of pigs and predicting weight. And we, 35 years later, we're still not widely using these technologies because, for example, when I started my work back in around 2002, after years of work, development work, developing algorithms, because it's obviously not as easy as you can appreciate, taking picture of animals, measuring a certain dimension and predicting weight. We put the camera in practice and figured out very quickly that flies just love gathering around the lenses because it was a warm environment for them in wintertime.
Makes sense.
And they put on the lenses, rendering the very fancy technology pretty much useless within a couple of weeks.
My goodness.
So we had to completely redesign the equipment to ensure that there are no heat sources around the lens. And had to come up with some innovative ways of protecting the lens. So these little things, it's amazing, unforeseeable. You can't predict that in advance until you sort of try it. These things make technologies viable or non-viable.
I see.
So,
right.
This is a fantastic idea, and obviously, since then we actually developed the equipment. We now have a couple of commercial installation as well, working quite well. But you have to overcome these things, and when you are a startup company sort of person, these are incredible knockbacks because kind of life smile at you and give you a smack from a direction you wouldn't expect that to come. So
Exactly.
so these kind of we also developed a complex environmental monitoring gear. Again, very good. It was a good outcome because my original research background was in air quality research in livestock building. So we did a lot of scientific studies, the impact of ammonia, dust, etc. on animals, and used a lot of fancy separate instrumentation and end of number of years of working in that area. I thought it's all very good for us scientists to be able to measure that. How the poor farmers will be able to measure that because they don't have these technologies. So we basically put together the scientific instrumentation in a package, literally, put everything in one box. So it's a relatively, and Sebastian, you've been using that equipment and relatively, but again,
a portable device.
It is a portable device. But again, and Sebastian, we will talk about that during our talk. There are still problems. There are internet outages. There are all sorts of problems. Which is a lot of times outside of our cows chewing on certain cables and
eating sensors.
It's a really fascinating, challenging. You don't get bored. So it's a research area where you certainly don't get bored.
You make it sound like it's a big adventure, actually.
It is.
Is it for you guys?
If you have a good sense of humor, because sometimes you want to kill either someone or yourself because it's very challenging, but no, it is good fun. So,
but it's also important that we are looking also for relatively cheap equipment. We don't want to go for, very sophisticated devices that will be very expensive because no one will buy it. I mean, on the on the level of research, we can of course test it as a new technology. But then when you want to go to farmer and just leave the equipment for, I don't know, 50K at the farm, this is not possible because no one will be responsible for that, and the farmers he will not look at it, and then you are afraid that you will lose it, like cow will eat it or whatever, and all the tricky piggies are really like looking for everything.
Are they curious animals?
Yeah, very curious.
Are they really
Pigs are destructive.
Yeah.
Well, let's put it that way. So
Wow.
it's probably the most destructive animal, isn't it?
So that's also another target, that you have to do it simple and achievable for most of the farmers, which means that probably the precision will not be so high, and then that's another issue. So you have to work harder to get it to be this win-win situation, that you have a cheap stuff but also precise one. So the challenges are really high, and then you have to. I mean, I hope we will manage someday that it will be really well developed technology everywhere,
Yeah.
like with the mobiles. Yeah, I mean, this is good example of the phones that we within one life actually we could see development of the mobiles. Yeah, and then I like this comparison because we were talking about the microclimate, and this is something that it's quite well developed in the farm, at the barn. So we are monitoring basically the temperature, humidity, some gases like CO2, for example. So on that level, I think we have relatively cheap sensors. The system is also working. But that was another story. For example, the farmers, they got this app out the mobile, which was reporting them the situation in the barn. And on the beginning, they wanted to have it online all the time. So every 5 minutes, let's say, that was a report from the farm. Everything is okay. And then it was sending the level of the gases and the temperature status and the humidity status. But what if something happened and then you've seen it, and this is like Sunday evening, and you are sitting having your beer, and then you see on the app that ammonia is rising. Yeah. So they will start to panic, and then and they run to the barn, and then nothing happened. Actually, that was just one-time situation. And then after a month, they switch off the app because they were so annoyed by this app. And they were like, I don't want it like on time, all the time, because I don't want to look at it, because I cannot plan anything. So that was another nice story, and the feedback from the farmers, what they actually expecting.
Sebastian, you will talk about two other technologies, I think, just as an example. But before you do that, I just very briefly wanted to highlight what you said. It's so important that not only we try to come up with scientifically reliable instrumentation, we have to consider costs, precision, and robustness. And obviously, a lot of these things sort of work against each other. So we basically try to optimize these sometimes opposing requirements within the instrument. And it's the same thing also what you said. It's so good that providing information and how often, again, it's an optimization, a very difficult optimization process, because you can be overburdened farmers with information, and they love it for 2 days, and after that they hate you basically because you interfere with their work all the time, providing unnecessary information. It's like a too keen student, isn't it? Who's at your door all the time asking questions. God bless them.
I can ask you to maybe move on to those technologies you just mentioned, but also maybe in just a few words, have you reached the compromise with all these requirements? I mean,
we hope we did.
Have you worked
Sebastian
with some instruments that are actually you feel useful for farmers, and that you feel that your job has been well done, with maybe optimizing some things and making their lives easier? Yeah,
for sure. I mean, we are going to the situation that they need more like advisors from us, what they are expecting from us, not just providing data and information. So like Thomas said, we don't want to, send a lot of data to them and then leave them with that data. And then they look at it, it's like, okay, so what I should do now? Should I close ventilation or maybe less cows in the barn? And then so we want to more to report them actually real solution for the future, so we can observe the system and we can react. That was also an example, because everybody is now talking about the climate change, about how we can avoid the influence of it, and also on the livestock production. And of course, in this summer in Poland, we had a lot of heat, and then we had to crash with a new situation. And then it's already happening in countries like in Africa or in Asia, where the high temperatures, and then you have to deal with the livestock production with this system. So you have to adjust it, and you know that if you are trying to predict what is coming to the farm, then you can, for example, do some solution, and then they can prevent animals from this heat stress, for example. Yeah. So I think that there are tools that already are existing, but it's more like how to use it and how to use it in this practical way, that the farmer will be also not getting additional work to do. He has just like simple idea, and then he's doing it.
I will share one very good example, and it's basically, I must say, we're very proud of our recent achievements. So we put out one of our weight detect instrumentation in a South European country, not naming anyone, keeping the confidentiality intact. And basically, we picked up a very significant growth rate reduction as we sort of monitoring the growth rate, growth pattern of the animals.
And this was any specific group of animals?
Pigs,
Pigs.
basically.
Growth is important.
That's very, very important, that basically the speed of the growth influences the profitability, simple as that. So they basically stopped growing for a while, and we figured out later on that they were diagnosed 6 days later with respiratory infections. Mm-hmm. So we basically picked up the respiratory infection 6 days earlier, before the clinical signs appeared, allowing potentially, farmers and then veterinarians to treat the animal earlier, use less antibiotic, which is extremely important, reduce the growth rate reduction impact on the profitability, and get the animals back to their healthy status earlier. So that's a hugely important sort of feature. So we're very, very, very pleased with that achievement, I must say.
Excellent. And you've mentioned that you don't want to overburden the farmers, you don't want to add to their duties. We know that we talked about that ratio. There are less farmers now, and the expectation is bigger on them to produce more meat for everybody. So can you maybe tell me a little bit more about what kind of other limitations you have found also with these tools?
Well, the one that was already mentioned, it's this access to internet connectivity. Because on one side we want to be with a cable one. I think it's not a problem, but then it's also technical issue how you will put another cable inside of the building. So we want to do it wireless for sure. And then if you look at the barn, and if you look at the material that it's made of, like the building, then you have a lot of stainless steel, which is also really complicated for the signal. And then you can, and also not every area, every location, even in Poland. Yeah, I mean, we are not in Estonia, because lately we were in Estonia. That's not completely an issue. In Estonia, internet is everywhere.
I think I heard that.
That's amazing.
Digitalization is just amazing. Gone.
That is amazing. That is amazing.
So unfortunately, Poland is not Estonia, and then we are still struggling with this problem. And when we were going to the barn, sometimes we had to take 4 SIM cards, because we didn't know which supplier will be the best for that part. So that's certain limitation for sure.
But you are not alone. So it's, we had same experiences in Spain, in Germany, in Austria.
Austria, I'm quite surprised. They seem to be, an industrialized country.
Very surprising. Of course, Australia, due to the distances, you have all sorts of issues. But, in highly populated European countries, where you expect internet without problems.
And
you
then
have
of
problems
course
all the time.
And of course you want to make it cheap, so because of course you can have a Starlink everywhere,
That's
but
right.
then it's really really expensive.
That's right.
And then that's not an issue. The issue is like the Turkish friends that we have also with our last project. They were also saying that they have, for example, problem with electricity, because it's not like in here that you can have it everywhere and then you have it stable and constant access to it. So that was something another that opened our eyes. Okay, so maybe we need like some batteries, but batteries means another expenses, and another issue also. Let's say environmental, because batteries are not completely friendly for environment.
Exactly.
And transport issues.
Yeah,
Believe me,
also.
if you want to
And
send
then utilization
equipment with,
after,
it's heavy.
after its lifetime as
Exactly,
well. So it's
exactly. Exactly.
The waste after, of course.
Yeah.
So it's not so easy. I mean, sometimes it looks very easy, but then when you go into it more
details,
in
and the practical
yeah,
details, exactly.
then it's quite challenging.
And of course, we have other issues with technology implementation. So we recently together finished a project called Livestock Sense, which exactly aimed to sort of establish or understand the differences, between different farms. Why one farm is better at adopting new technologies and others may not be that good.
Does it vary, would you say, from farm to farm rather
It
than
does.
country to country?
It does. So basically, without here, obviously, which is more for a general public, try to be too specific. We basically developed a program, essentially a predictive artificial intelligence program, which kind of assesses, technology users in a very gentle, friendly way, and advise them that, well, maybe that's not quite for you. Well, think about it or go for it. That you are absolutely ready, and basically. It's to do with the general technological readiness of the farm, how modern their buildings are, how readily they use other modern technologies and therefore able to look after fairly sophisticated technologies. And of course, that's related to the fact whether they have enough capital available to do these updates. So unfortunately, and it sounds very harsh, but farms with limited resources, not just finances, but maybe human resources, etc., are less likely to be able to adopt these technologies than farms with new buildings, readily available capital, readily available human capital. These are not easy technologies to maintain, so we really need to have personnel on the farm who have this kind of animal husbandry as well as technical capacities and abilities. And later on, I believe we will talk about that, the rules of universities associated with that.
Exactly.
I'm not running ahead, and we will talk about that later, but I think it's extremely important to understand that we need, we often joke about it, that we need geeks with incredible farm abilities, and this sort of combination, it's very difficult.
It's going to be hard to get them ready-made, but I guess
exactly
they can learn. Maybe one more thing here on the limitations.
I just want to add also about the limitation that I think this is also one of the crucial one that. But like we said, there is a complex system and there are different suppliers of those systems. So imagine that you have a supplier who is supplying at the beginning the farm with like very basic equipment. And additionally, he's giving them also the equipment for monitoring, like microclimate. And then you are coming with another system, the ventilation system, and sometimes they are not compatible with each other. And then you have a problem because they are different companies, so they don't want to talk to each other. They want you to have it only for themselves. So they are really competing on the market. So then you are coming to the farmer, and for the farmer is something that, okay, I don't want to now, to be that this part is from that supplier, the other from the other one. let's go and talk each other, but they don't want to talk each other.
Interoperability issues. Yeah.
So that's a huge challenge because if I have information, if I have data that they can influence ventilation system, but this is a separate system and I cannot get into it, that I cannot change it.
True.
And what the farmer is expecting a certain level of automatization. So if you have the data, then the data is immediately going to the ventilation system, and then, for example, it's open, closed, whatever, and it's operating. But if it's not like that, he has to do it manually anyway. So that's additional work for him. So he's saying, okay, maybe one day I will do that, the other not. Maybe some worker will do that, maybe he will not do that. So that's also very, very big problem.
Can I just quickly say that because these challenges, so we really strongly believe, and that was one of our recommendation out of the Livestock Sense project, that probably it's a typical classic market failure situation. Yeah. Early adoption of technologies. So really governments have a role to step in.
That's what I wanted to
step
ask.
in. That's right. Yeah.
What about the government or even the EU level?
Exactly.
Should there be, in your mind, some kind of
100%,
requirements or guidelines?
So not so much just guidelines, but I think governments really have the role of stepping in and helping initially the uptake of these technologies, creating the appropriate legal framework, and probably some kind of financial encouragement. Now, Europe, Australia, we're all falling behind. Asia is really charging ahead. I had a student, and I was absolutely surprised from Korea, where the Korean government actually built a huge demonstration farms where technology providers can just come in, install their technologies. They paid for it very generously to look after it. So it's a showcase for farmers. I would love to see this kind of demonstration, facilities in Europe or in Australia.
Did I understand that correctly? So the Korean government, this is their farm. It's a government-owned farm.
100%.
And they invited tech companies to provide equipment.
100%. And demonstrate. So a lot of Asian countries like Korea, high-tech countries, they really want to modernize their agriculture further, which is already very advanced, Japan, Korea, etc. So they're doing a lot of encouragement and a lot of work, as a government to encourage the uptake of these technologies.
What do you think about that, Sebastian? That's nice, isn't it?
Yeah, it's...
That's like, do you think our government will ever, talking about Poland here, yes. Sorry, Thomas.
Sure.
Will they ever be open to something like that?
I think every government should be open for that, but also you have to remember that those suppliers of these technologies, if they will develop it on their side, at their country, they will be paying taxes after their production. So it is quite nice investment for the government because... if you will see that you have decreased places at the farmers, then you can increase the places for the workers at, for example, the factories of the suppliers. So that's also another issue. And then I think every way to encourage people to work for something at your side, this is something very important. And of course, with the farmers, you have the situation that they are not so open for new technologies if they are not tested already.
Absolutely.
So that's if I am a farmer, Thomas is a farmer, and he's using already something, and he's coming to me showing these fancy things that he's using and saying, oh, okay, this is great, this is helping me. I'm thinking, he has it, I should buy it as well. Yeah. And that's the best whispering marketing you can have.
For sure.
But if Thomas will tell me that, this is, very stupid app, it's not working, it's so annoying, I don't want it. I said, funny, he invested. And then I can laugh at it. So this is something like that. This is really like human behavior, but this is something that you have to include it. So if you have potentially this kind of factory like in Korea, in Poland, that they can come, they can touch, they can check everything.
100%.
This is perfect for them.
Right. Okay, fingers crossed for that kind of future and not too distant, hopefully. You touched on that already, that we're going to have to, the farmers will have to possibly retrain or something has to change so that they can be more efficient, that they can actually work with those systems and work with the data. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? What do you think the academia, where does it all fit in that scheme of...
I have some strong views, but I have to remain very diplomatic here.
Right.
So in my olden days, when I started my career, there were a lot of independent colleges, if you remember, back on those days, agriculture colleges, which specifically aimed to educate, not scientists necessarily, might be, but not necessarily, but a lot of high-tech, innovative, young farm managers. Now, these colleges basically disappeared everywhere. They typically, in all countries, we talked about that, Sebastian, they've been dissolved into, incorporated into larger universities. And I love universities, don't misunderstand it. I don't want to be sacked by any universities. But unfortunately, universities now put disproportional emphasis on just pure scientific education, which is important, nothing wrong with that. But we need practical aspect in university education, especially for young farmers, for example. They need to understand the science, they have to have that link, but we need to provide some practical knowledge which they can actually take to their farms and improve the quality of agriculture production, for example, using new technologies. So I think, and there are some good examples, isn't it? And you will be able to see a few.
Is there something maybe here in Poland that is like a good example of a course that you particularly liked, that you maybe experienced yourself, Sebastian?
You mean like a course or more like a already set up that they have, for example, a technical university?
In fact, both. I think I'm interested in both. Is there maybe a specific course that you came across? It doesn't have to be by our university, but maybe you feel that it's been constructed in such a way or designed in such a way that this really will give the farmer.
I know that some companies, without having the saying name, for example, in Netherlands, they're using this setup for promoting their let's say equipment and production. So they build like very small farms that the people during the weekend can come and just look at the production. And there are also all these nice things, because you have to remember that now more people is living in the cities, less at the villages. So they are also not so good. So it's not so familiar with the rural system. So that's another issue. And then I remember that I was every holidays going at the village to my grandparents, and they had few animals, and I was really familiar with that. It's not happening anymore. Yeah, now the people for the holidays are going to Egypt or to Asia or whatever,
Very good.
and they are not looking at the animals at all. So if you literally ask someone how many eggs one hen can lay per day, they can even say 5 or 6, which is amazing.
Will you please give us the right answer?
Yeah,
for everyone,
almost,
how many?
Almost 1, yeah. So that shows you that they are not educated. So that's I agree with Thomas that scientific level, the high scientific excellence is very important, but also we have to deal with the regular basic knowledge that it's not that for us it's something obvious that they know it, but they don't have a clue. And then I'm coming to the point that this is the best way if you make the setups like this. And I was mentioning about, for example, how to make it familiar with the use. We use all these tools that we are now using. So the mobiles, everyone has 1 or 2 even. So if you can sneak via mobile into their mind, for example, via some social media and something like that, that's also important. Sometimes it's funny. And for the guys like we are, quite adult, then maybe it's not so...
So good science communication?
Yeah.
Very important.
Maybe not
Very
so
important.
high science, but actual
That's right.
easy questions
Practical.
answered in a practical, funny way.
Absolutely. And as I said, there are actually good examples. So there are universities in Australia now try to provide almost vocational level of courses. In Taiwan, when I worked there, I had the opportunity to put on a very practical precision farming course, and I also developed for would-be entrepreneurs a PLF commercialization course. So it was a course about the problems and challenges associated with commercializing PLF type technologies. So these courses are basically increasingly, as a very good example, provided by universities. But what I wanted to say here and emphasize that I think there is incredibly important role to play for universities to retain the new workforce, which will be required on farms, which, as I said, they need to be at least technologically aware, if not experts, but technologically aware.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. And I think we also talked about how much data is generated by all these systems. And then you said that those companies don't talk to each other, so that finally farmers get confused. Do you see, Sebastian, some things changing in the near future in terms of how this data is delivered and then how it is stored, how it can be shared?
Yeah, there are two important things. I mean, one is, of course, enormous number of gigabytes of data coming to the system, and then someone has to deal with it. So you need, like, for sure, artificial intelligence, machine learning, whatever you call it. You need all this, these techniques to deal with that. But
to digest, the captured
and then
data,
to extract the most important thing from a lot of information. And for sure, not a farmer will do that. Not also the scientists. I think this is something for a really already developed system, but still trained. And then we will develop it. And then it is something versus should we storage them, or should we just decrease the weight of them, and then there may be less place for the storage. But sometimes the supercomputers that you have to use for it are much more expensive than the storage system. So you have to think about it. It's really quite important. And the other thing is the ownership of the data, actually, because we were talking about a lot who is actually the owner of the data, if they're coming from the barn, but to the system that is outside and that is supplied by the supplier of the technology. So because then he's selling the idea to someone else, but it was trained on the basis of data of someone else. So maybe the farmer is saying, like, hey,
exactly.
I need some profit from it. So that's another problem. And the third, maybe not the last one, is also if you have a data already created, maybe someone can take it and use it against you. Something that he will just cut a small part of this data and show it that something is going wrong. But it was actually not an issue in that case. But he can use it. He can manipulate it. So that's another. So everything in our work between us as people from academia and the farmer is on the basis of trust, because they have to trust us that they will not use the data against them. But still, it's already produced, so it's existing. So of course, someone can hack it and take it. So that's also a big concern from the farmers.
So as Sebastian, you said quite correctly. So data security, data ownership is an extremely important issue. In Australia, a lot of farmers now becoming aware of that. It's a little bit like Facebook selling your data to different, analytical companies,
for example.
Don't mention any names, but look, it's definitely important issue, and they basically start pulling together the data in large data storage areas, becoming aware that there is a value just in that collected information. Now, we recently put up a project together with Japanese colleagues, and I think you are you are part of that as well, where we basically try to provide incentives for farmers, recognizing that they majorly contribute to a information-rich value chain. And we basically try to encourage them financially, if need be, to share the data, what we collected or other technology providers collected on their farms, share it within the value chain for the benefit of the value chain. So practical example, if we measure the weight of the pigs continuously, we can very precisely predict when the animals will be ready for a slaughterhouse. So the slaughterhouse can much better organize their schedule, killing schedule, etc. Or they can provide feedback to the feed companies so they can provide the appropriate feed for these animals. But farmers need to get some kind of benefit out of sharing that information. So that is extremely important. And I personally recognize that, and I very much encourage everyone to also recognize that, and somehow, as I said, support and reward the farmers who allowed their precious data to be collected.
And have you been successful with this project so far? Do you think it's going how you envisaged it was going to
We
go?
don't know. We're still waiting for a decision in terms of funding, but we're very, very, very keen and very hopeful that we will get funding for this project, because these issues are just emerging. So I think people still doing a lot of research on technology development, but these additional issues, adoption issues, data usage issues are just emerging, and we have to deal with those issues effectively.
And I think you mentioned before, when we spoke before that podcast, that actually maybe we're quite fortunate here that animals, maybe they're not so concerned with their privacy, but the farmers are. So again, there must be some illegal issues also, I think, in play here.
Definitely. In terms of, again, people usually make this or use this term, Big Brother watching, whatever. What is really important for the general public to understand when we're monitoring the animals, actually for their very benefit. So there are obviously not privacy issues as we understand for humans. If we monitor the animals, it is for that very reason, to be able to look after these animals better, because we understand their current status, whether they are in an optimal environment, whether they are in their optimal physiological well-being. We're monitoring that to be able to look after them better. So there are no Big Brother issues there, I can reassure you.
Yeah, but there is also something that we all aware that we have some governmental agencies that are coming to farm, and the inspectors of the welfare, for example, and they have to come because that's the regulation. And they are normally collecting data by themselves because they have equipment, so they make the measurements. But this is very small part. To be honest, I'm not always thinking that they are going in a right way, or maybe it's not always the right picture of the barn. And then can use those data because they are already produced from the farm, so they can also go into it for the better knowledge about what's going on the farm. So that's also from the perspective of the governmental agency, it should be very important to use it. And I'm going to this side that if it's also something that will decrease the amount of work that you have, maybe you should be participating also in the cost of it, because this is something that is nice also for monitoring by the government what's going on. And I'm saying monitoring in a good way, and not monitoring that we want to catch you. It's monitoring.
Yes, exactly. Catch you to do something wrong and then pay.
So that's why what Thomas said about Big Brother is, on one side, it's something nice, because everything is transparent, and then you can look at it. But that's why the farmers also are afraid that someone will use the movies, use the data just against them, because there will be another reason for that. So
I know we are very close to our time to finish here, but just two issues very quickly. So I think what Sebastian referred to, there is currently a requirement in whole European countries to monitor ammonia levels, for example. But normally, just as every quarter a year or every half a year, an inspector would go there, have a spot check. So we promote that idea, because one of our equipment, what we use, EnviroDetect, measures continuously, which gives a much better view of what the real ammonia levels or CO2 levels or methane levels on that farm. A lot of times, spot checks are actually disadvantaging farmers. Contrary to the general belief, ammonia levels tend to be higher during daytime due to increased evaporation from the manure. So when you have a average ammonia continuously measured, you usually get a much more realistic and lower level of measurements due to the fact that we measure it over a months period or 2 months. So absolutely right. So basically, in addition to, as you said, all these monitoring issues are now used in some countries to defend themselves against undue claims by certain organizations. So, for example, in America and in some places in Australia, farmers now put in cameras into their own barns, made it available on the internet, real-time screening, to reassure the public that what they do is
correct.
Not just correct, but it's completely in the interest of their animals. They're doing their utmost to look after, and there is no one to criticize them because they make their farm transparent. So a lot of these, for example, environmental, our instrumentation measuring ammonia emission, dust emission, etc. A lot of these farms are unduly pressured or criticized of not being environmentally viable or sustainable. And basically these measurements, when they make it public, they can basically use that information to defend themselves from undue criticism.
Interesting. Have you come across anything like that here in Poland?
Yeah, I mean, at the technical university, there's a beehive on the roof of the faculty of chemistry, I think, or some faculty, doesn't matter, that they put camera inside of the beehive, so you can
beehives are so cute. I love beehives.
So how they working, how they flying out, and then what's going on there. So that's something that gets you familiar with all these things. But could be nice to have something like this at our university, and also
we are the
faculty.
We also have, I think, we have beehive. I mean, bees specialists.
We have a bee specialist, but we have also the other animals. So imagine that the students are having the practical work at our research station, and then you have a camera there, and then they can watch it, and then also you have a nice screen at the Faculty of Biology and Animal Science, which is actually the faculty dedicated to those science, and then they can look at it, and then you can use it also for the educational purposes. Exactly. So that's something that we have like a small farm at this Chełmońskiego campus, where my friends are showing the birds to students, and it is also nice because they are not showing slides; they are showing real birds.
This is can we call it like a city farm? Because that's not rural. That's for those people who are not familiar.
But at least something. Yeah, I mean,
no. I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying this is also a trend.
Absolutely, urban farming. Urban farming.
Yeah, I was in Amsterdam a month ago, and I was just going next to the channel, or what was already river, which is coming through Amsterdam, and there was a small farm with the lying hens next to the ferry.
Absolutely.
And a guy was living on that at that place, and then he had fresh eggs every day. But it was literally 100%. Next to the street and next to the channel.
100%.
So, and of course, I will be a little bit aware about welfare of these animals inside of that, because it wasn't like so nice. Especially that was really like 40 degrees. In a shadow, so I don't know if they were comfortable. But
my understanding is that we already picked the next topics, which might be environmental issues, in animal farming, both inside and outside of animal buildings. So we can probably talk next time when we have our next. But urban farming is really interesting, bringing farming to the cities, also for educational purposes, because as you correctly said, a lot of the people now completely disconnected. So maybe that could be our third topic, because I'm extremely interested in, I actually lectured on urban farming as well. Very interesting topic. And I think if nothing else, for educational purposes is extremely important. And of course, if you produce your food close to the user base, basically the transportation, etc., just out of interest, do you know which country would be the most advanced in urban farming? You wouldn't guess.
Oh, wait a second. Can I just have a few shots?
Yeah.
Is it a European country?
Oh, I can't help you, but it's not.
It's US. No?
I would say China.
USA, no?
Okay, couple of years earlier, I don't have it up to date. It was actually Cuba, which pioneered.
Goodness.
I think out of necessities, they have a lot of, but they're fantastic apparently. Even in the middle of Havana, they produce incredible amount of vegetables and small animals, etc. So we have a lot to learn from different countries.
I reckon I know my next holiday destination. And on that note, thank you very much for being our guests today. And everybody, thank you very much. Goodbye.
Well,
Thank you.
I would like to also thank for this opportunity. And I also want to say that I'm extremely proud of the fact that I'm now a affiliated staff of your university.
Yeah.
So hopefully our association and collaboration will go for a long time. So thank you very much for the opportunity. See you next time.
Thank you for being here and see you
Thank you,
next
Thomas.
time. Thank you.
Vita.
Bye-bye.
Bye.